Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 11th, 2024 regular board meeting. I'd like to announce that the meetings of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and increased public access. The live stream, along with recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board's YouTube channel. At this time, if all would like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we'll have a brief moment of silent meditation. Roll call, Mr. Longwell.
Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Mr. Frangel.
Here.
Mrs. Huff.
Here.
Mr. Kickline.
Here.
Dr. Lebo. Here. Ms. Morgan.
Here.
Dr. Rhodes. Mr. Sanker.
Here.
And Mr. Rupp.
Here. Endorsement of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Longwell?
There are no changes to the agenda, and it will otherwise stand as written, Mr. Rupp.
Reading of the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 14th, 2024. Do any board members have any corrections to the meetings? Seeing none, we'll accept them as printed. Item 2, hearing of visitors of items on the meeting agenda. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents and taxpayers of the school district. At this time, we have reached the first opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments related to items that are listed on the evening's agenda for a vote. A second opportunity for public comment will occur at the end of the meeting. The second opportunity for public comment is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please share your name and municipality in which you reside at the podium. This is for comments on items that are being voted on tonight's agenda.
Good evening, Robert Schaefer, Upper Allen Township. Commenting on new business personnel, appointment of Dr. Christopher Bowman and appointment of Dr. Gregory Longwell, both as assistant superintendents, and a brief comment on one of the new position for communication specialist. My question or my comment is that in looking through the materials online in preparation for this meeting, I saw the name Christopher Bowman, but nothing, no CV, no resume, nothing about him. It seems to me that for the public to have any kind of input into such an important, or even comment on such an important appointment, that the expertise of this particular person that you are recommending should be available in advance. Now, I was able to locate Christopher Bowman's whatever it is, entry on LinkedIn. I don't know what you call it, resume on LinkedIn. So I have no, he's obviously a principal, long-standing principal at New Oxford High School. I have no particular objection based on that, but I don't think it should be the responsibility of the public to have to search for that sort of information on such an important appointment. Obviously, I'm familiar with Mr. Longwell, but in approving a new assistant superintendent position for him, there should be some information available about qualifications and background. Similarly, perhaps not quite as dramatically, the position of communication specialist is a new position. Obviously, that's in a somewhat different category than the numerous teachers or instructional aides and things like that. You can't put everybody's CV on. But for a new position, like that, it seems to me that the qualifications of that individual should be available. Again, I know something about her from just following the news in this region over the years, but in the interest of transparency and informing district residents, I think some additional information about those positions or the candidates for those positions should have been made available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Any other public comment on items that are being voted on at tonight's meeting? Seeing none, move on to item 3, reports and presentations. Superintendent of School report, Dr. Leidy.
Yes, good evening. I have 3 items this evening, and I'd like to start with the first being the issuance of general obligation bond, which is Series 2024. And when I think about the progression of these over the years, this is just shy of a $10 million borrowing, and think about what we had set out to do 8 years ago, and it's pretty amazing that we predicted 8 years ago we would be very close to where we have landed. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Remick, Mr. Hovis, and Melissa Hughes. If you want to come up, go ahead and have a seat and share with us how it went today.
Well, I think as you all know, when things go well, I show up. So things did obviously go very well today. And how fitting your last meeting is a financing for a capital plan that we did together 8 years ago. We were chatting a little before the meeting, and when Mark took that seat and we started doing transactions for the district, they were mostly refinancings, and refinancings are fun because you save money, things of that nature. But when we went halfway through your tenure, we had to start planning for this. And I have to tell the board, there's a lot of members here that have been through all this as well. It's been quite a ride. It's been quite a ride. It's been a fun ride. It's been a well thought out ride. A lot of communication with the administration. The board has been great to work with to try and, kind of take some advice and plan for this. And, as you look across the district, what you've done is transforming. It really is. It's really amazing. So I think I actually got a little bit nostalgic. I went through my file today and I saw the first time we got together in 2016. I have the first handout when we talked to the board about planning for the elementary schools in 2017, the first bond issue we did to start this in October of 2017, and looked through, I think there are 7 or 8 different transactions that we've done since coming up to tonight, kind of a true testament to the district, the board, the administration on planning, long-term planning. To be able to accomplish this, you don't just wake up and you have to think it all through. So, I really want to thank you for that. Thank goodness we had somebody other than me running the numbers, doing all the work and making it all work for us. So thanks obviously to Melissa for all of her efforts. And it's also great to look and see what happened the last time we're doing a transaction. So I think hopefully we handed out to you a bond sale report that has some of the details of the transaction. And the first page, as you all know, I love my colorful charts, all different colors. Obviously, interest rates have been gone up since the pandemic. But one of the things that I always find that's important or interesting is if you look at history and you look at the top chart, you'll notice the blue line mostly below the red line. A little bit above it because of what the Fed's doing, but overall, we're still below historic averages. So I always like to keep that in perspective when everyone thinks that rates are up. The municipal bond market has been functioning well, and it's been functioning well for good credits, as we refer to Mechanicsburg Area School District, like yourself. So it's been very well received. And what evidence is that is page number 3 and 4. We had the auction today. When it started at 11, it was supposed to end at 11:15. But if you may recall how this works, the winning bid must stand for 2 minutes. So the auction can be extended, which means that there were multiple bids after the deadline because bidders were deciding that they wanted to go even lower on their interest rate for your bonds. So we had some what we call extensions during that period. Overall, we had 6 firms that are listed on this page interested in buying your bonds. Okay, and over the course of the period of the auction, column 4, Those 6 firms bid 45 times during this relatively brief auction period that went through. So that's a tremendous amount of activity. So when we see our screens light up, that makes us pleased, because then we know every single dollar is being cut and going back towards your projects and things of that nature. FHN Financial was the low proposer. Melissa's going to rescue me. It's interesting, they're in, I think it's Memphis.
They are in Memphis.
They're in Memphis, Tennessee. People in Memphis, Tennessee were buying Mechanicsburg area school district bonds.
I was saying to Steve earlier in the morning, or earlier before the meeting started, FHN isn't a super frequent bidder in Pennsylvania, but when you see them on the screen, you know they're there to be very serious.
Yeah. So it was great. It was great to watch that auction go over time. As you know, your credit rating's strong. I forgot to mention that, you know, even going through this period of all this significant borrowing and capital planning and things of that nature, the district has maintained its credit rating in the AA category. You know, so we're kind of looking back to what things were like 7 or 8 years ago. Stay in the AA, you're in the AA category.
Sure.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing. The chronology of the bids is on page number, oh man, numbers are too small, page number 4. So you can see kind of the first bid came in up at the top left at just a little before 11:05, and the last bid came in at 11:21. It's pretty amazing that, you know, 15, 16 minutes, 16, 17 minutes, 45 bids. The next page, page number 5, which is the colored page, another colored page, there's a navy blue column that shows all the completed issues that I already mentioned. Okay, you can see over the years, almost over 150 million of borrowed funds towards capital projects over that period of time to accomplish all that you've accomplished. The lighter blue is the payment schedule for the new bonds. And then column number, I guess it would be column 8 is the payments for the new bonds. Column 9 is where you're winding up for all your existing indebtedness. For comparative purposes, when we were here in April, when Melissa was here in April, if you look at the bottom of column 18, we thought for the 10 million principal and interest, it would be just over 16.1 million. And you can see where you wound up at just under 15. So it's about $1,120,000 better than where we anticipated in April. So that's kind of to give you an idea of the importance of, you know, the market hanging in there and the bidding activity, and quite frankly, your name.
And you might recall that for this last step, we went with a 20-year financing structure to give you flexibility on, you know, kind of exactly what you do with the cleanup proceeds. We know most of it's dedicated, right, to finishing out the existing high school project, and then, you know, there might be a little bit left over that you might have a little more flexibility with. And your debt service is going to be level for 20 years, and then we have a drop-off built in, so that, you know, 10 or 15 years from now, when we're here to talk about what do you need at the middle school, or hopefully I'll be here then. I see some people being like, I won't be here then. You know, we're thinking ahead for the future, right? Thinking ahead about how what we're doing today impacts decision-making ability later.
So throughout the rest of the packet are probably the sheets that Greg cares about the most, and Bobby, you know, all the details of the, you know, actual payments, and so we have a detailed breakout of that. We kind of summarize it with the word, as well as the sources and uses of funds. We'll end, you know, when Steve takes over and gets it through the state and all that, we plan on closing sometime in the middle part of July. I think the 16th is when the funds will be turned over. We did attach a detailed page, again, mostly for Greg, on page 8, kind of shows you as you budget all the different bonds. You can see all by breakout, by bond, by debt service, by fiscal year. It's all broken out there, as well as we did include a copy of the credit rating report. That's good light reading, 10 o'clock, and, you know, you just finished watching a game or your favorite show. It's always interesting to hear what the rating agency has to say about Mechanicsburg Area School District. And it's very favorable. I mean, really throughout this whole process to maintain something in the AA category. Pretty amazing.
Anyone have any questions?
Just could you touch on that AA rating? Obviously, you know, one of the challenges I think the board has at times is the balance of maintaining a healthy fund balance and what you have to do on an expense side. Would you speak to, from your perspective, what having that healthy fund balance allowed us to do from an interest rate perspective?
On this transaction, although somebody proposed a pretty low bond insurance premium, and typically bond insurance is needed when you start getting into the category just below you, although they bid it pretty low, if your rating was to drop, that premium's going to go up. It's going to go up and you're going to have to pay. Right now, it was cheap and you still didn't have to pay for it, even though we had it as an option for bidders. So that's something you're going to avoid having to pay. Obviously, once you cross over the AA to the single A category, the interest rates start going up. And you hear anywhere from 1/10 to 1/4% potentially at times. So while I don't have an exact number, you're going to pay more interest on your debt if you kind of slip into that other category.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say over $160 million, we're talking millions of dollars of difference, not thousands of dollars.
So how nervous do you get when it's open to bid and it's almost 5 minutes before somebody shows up? Like,
So it's actually kind
that
of,
normal?
that's early.
oh, really?
It's normal.
Are they waiting for other people to?
There's like a pattern to it. Oftentimes somebody will bid at about 8 minutes and a lot of people will jump in at minute 12. And you know what to expect. So
Look at
5
this.
minutes is great.
You see the second bid? 11:10.
Yeah.
So I had one bid until 5 minutes was up for the auction.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Melissa will tell you who's the worry ward. I'm the worry ward.
I think it's gonna be fun.
It's going to be
But we went with the person that bid it first.
But they improved their bid over time.
I think we calculated it was over 6 figures from their first bid to with that last bid.
Straight.
You're up, sir.
I'll try to take a little bit of your time, and Greg said you were all veterans, and as Brad noted, you've been on the capital plan process, and you've been through this before. But in order to approve the authorization of debt, you have to pass a resolution in accordance with the local government unit debt act, and that's what we're doing tonight. It incorporates a lot of the information that Brad reviewed with you, and as a result of the sale today, we did modify the resolution that was on your board packet last week to reflect all the pricing information that we received today. The first page of that resolution does provide a general summary of all the things that are in the remainder of the resolution. I sort of like to capture the first few lines in that you're authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral debt by the issuance of general obligation bonds, series of 2024, the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $9,840,000 to assist in the financing of your capital projects, as well as the payment of all costs and expenses of issuance of the bonds. We call them general obligation bonds because you're not pledging any buildings or other security. You're actually pledging your taxing power in order to pay the debt service that becomes due and owing on those bonds. On page 2, we identify what are you financing? What is the capital project? We try to do it a little bit broadly to provide the school district as much balance as well as they can finance other things, but we say it is for the planning, design, and construction of additions, improvements, renovations to various buildings and facilities of the school district, including your high school project. So fundamentally, that's what you're going to concentrate the use of these funds on with your high school project. At the bottom of page 2, we identify the winning bidder, or the underwriter in this case, which is FHN Financial Capital Markets. And they were the winning bidder, and therefore in accordance with paragraph 6, which is on page 9, we were approving the purchase proposal that was prepared after the bid was closed with them with a purchase price that's set forth on page 9, which ultimately is $9,905,825.37. The bond purchase proposal is attached as Exhibit B to the resolution. The other things you are required to approve as part of the resolution in accordance with the Act is your paying agent. In this case, it's M Manufacturers and Traders Trust Company. You are identifying that the capital projects have a useful life of at least 30 years. which extends beyond the last maturity of the bonds. You have declared these bonds to be bank qualified, which the representation you're making with that is that you have the reasonable intent not to issue in excess of $10 million in tax exempt funds during the 2024 calendar year. Greg has been doing a great job providing continuing disclosure information, and he will be obligated to continue to do that. And then you're also agreeing to comply with all of the rules and regulations of the Internal Revenue Code associated with the issuance of tax-exempt debt, as well as the arbitrage rules and regulations. You are appointing stock and leadership bond counsel, PFM as your financial advisor, and you're authorizing your officers to take any and all action necessary to actually approve the resolution tonight, as well as execute any and all of the closing documents that we'll sign right before the closing date on July 16th. That's 25 pages really quick, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I would not let this moment pass to thank your superintendent as well as the board. And I think every building that you see here is a reflection of the vision of the board, as well as the support, energy, and vision of your superintendent to get all this done. And the school district has been well suited for the future. You should be really proud.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, two more items for me. The first, it was wonderful to have the room full earlier this evening to recognize outstanding staff. Each year, the board, at the board's leadership, has recognized staff that have gone above and beyond in this district, and that says something given the number of staff members here. And it's a heartfelt, wonderful evening. I still continue to be impressed that over 180 nominations for outstanding staff were presented from our teachers, administrators, students, and parents. And I think it's just a great way to show what our staff can do. And for me personally, what a wonderful way to have a last school board meeting. And that is my last topic that I would like to share with the board as part of a superintendent's report. I was thinking earlier today, I've actually been sitting in public school board meetings at the table for 25 years, including my time before Mechanicsburg. In fact, my first time at a board table, I was being appointed as the secondary principal in the Phantom Meadow School District. And little did I know, as I was sitting in the audience, that the gentleman sitting beside me was going to stand up and rail against the board for the new high school principal that they had just hired, that he could have purchased 2 tractors and a whole herd of cattle for the same price that they were paying the new high school principal. And when he sat down, I introduced myself to him. 25 years later, we're still having great discussions around that. But I do want to just share with this board and echo both what our presenter said this evening. As bittersweet as this is, the reality in looking over the years, you know, it often was the number of people in the audience that would dictate what the tenor of the evening was going to be. And yet here in Mechanicsburg, there was as many evenings where the number of people in the audience was here for a good reason as there were, if not more, than people were here to show concerns about something. And even when our public showed up to present concerns to us, this board was always so professional in how you handled that. And honestly, the concerns and the complaints that came from our public often were issues that warranted our attention. And even though we might not agree at the end of the day, this is a really, really special community. I think of 1,200 additional students in this district, and Mr. Longwell will often say that we've added 1,200 students. That's the size of a number of school districts in our intermediate unit, and we've added that in the time that I've had the honor of sitting in this chair. So it has been humbling, and it has been without question the honor of my life to serve as the superintendent of Mechanicsburg Area School District, even after the redistricting, the reconfiguration, and the renovations that we've done to meet the needs of those kids. I'll finish with this. The future is incredibly bright for the school district. When I look at that gentleman sitting there that I've had the honor to work with for 21 years, starting as a high school math teacher, all the way through my assistant for the last several years, there is no doubt in my mind that Dr. Bitts is going to continue to take this district in the right direction for kids. And with the board's authorization later this evening to see the other gentleman sitting at the other end of that table to have the opportunity to serve in the role of assistant superintendent, I couldn't be happier. And that's not to mention Mr. Bowman back in the back of the room, who I can't wait to get to know better and continue to brag about what it means to be Wildcat proud and what this community is all about. So with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Ladd. Item 3.02, Capital Area Intermediate Unit, Mr. Bradley.
Yes, the board met on May 23rd and kicked it off with a presentation from a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Freeland, who gave us an interesting security briefing as a board. And so we won't go into detail, but let me just say that I jokingly said I've heard this before, and he just continues to seem to be doing a phenomenal job for the IU and finding many things that they need to keep an eye on. In addition, we talked about graduation season and the graduation opportunities that were made available for many of those students that are in the IU. They talk about the fact that for many of those students, they cannot really handle the 300 kids and parents and everything, that type of setting. So it's special to have a very smaller gathering with much more controlled environment, smaller number of people to give them an opportunity, even if they are still walking with their school district, to go through a graduation ceremony that is a little more comfortable for them. Talked a little bit about the Math 24 competition that the IU had put on. They said if you have never seen a Math 24 competition, it is incredible. The pace that the kids can go and figure that stuff out, they were very happy with that. Talked a little bit about cybersecurity. Again, that's a major issue. The IU is doing work as far as cybersecurity is concerned, continuing to tighten things up a little bit. Talked about their issues with transportation. A little interesting fact, last year they did 2 million miles in busing and van work because of the size of the IU and the size. Over 90 vans doing that work and maneuver around. So continuing to deal with that. And then Dr. Roberts talked a little bit about the strategic planning and talking about that whole concept of what gets measured gets done, and stressing, and also stressing you have to be conscious about what you're measuring, because you could measure a million things, but you really only should be measuring those things that are important, those things. And so talked a little bit about that. And then we will be meeting in a couple of weeks for the last session before they break for the summer.
Any questions for Mr. Bradley? Thank you for the report, Mr. Bradley.
Can I just mention Dr. Lady's impact not only on this district, but it's interesting how that expands to footprint beyond us. And so that saying, what gets measured gets done, I've heard that many times over the years from the good doctor. And so the impact that he has, not only on this district, but on all of the educational institutions around us. So.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lama. Item 3.03, Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center Report, Mr. Sanker.
Thank you. I attended the CTC's award night on May 21st, where which is not only an awards night, but where awards and scholarships, cash are distributed to deserving seniors. But nearly 400 graduating seniors from 20 programs walked across the stage. It was a long ceremony, something of a victim of the success of the CTC in the past couple of years. There are just like 100 more students than there were before, so a lot more. It took a while. So perhaps a venue change next year as well, which is a great thing. And I want to thank Mr. Reedy, who attended along with about 25 other administrators and board members from the sending districts. It was a good event. I also attended the Joint Operating Committee meeting. We met on May 28th, which is why I was not at our work session. We covered a number of items, including reviewing NOCD scores. NOCD is the credentialing organization for students completing the program study. 382 students took the NOCD exam, and 84% of them scored advanced or competent. It's either advanced, competent, or basic, or the 3 levels. The CTC scores have been in the high 80s the last 5 years, and yet it's one of our comprehensive plan goals to be 75% advanced and 90% in that advanced competent category. And as I said, we were at 84%, so a little bit of ways to go to reach that overall goal. As you'd expect, Mechanicsburg was near the top of the scores, 93% for our students, compared again to that 84% across the 13 districts. But still, overall, those are all great numbers, and one thing that we typically look at that time of year. Bids for our building project were opened at the end of May following that meeting. Were not what we had anticipated. We had a committee meeting following that included several superintendents, actually, who had interest in, kind of hearing what our next steps were. So we have a JOC meeting on June 24th where the board will make some decisions on the next steps, considering the bids were not what we had anticipated. So I will say, while we're talking about Dr. Leidy, another great advocate both for the CTC here at home, but also in my time being a part of the JOC has been very helpful to me and trying to navigate the politics of working with a number of other districts and how things just actually work between here and there, and it's been really helpful. I think there are many other competing responsibilities or priorities for time here, and I appreciate that you continue to keep the CTC as one of your focuses among all that. So thank you.
Questions for Mr. Sanker? Thank you for the report, Mr. Sanker. Item 3.05, PSBA legislative report. The only thing I really have to report is as we're moving from a class 3 to a class 2 district in our size, under the Pennsylvania School Code, we will now have 3 representatives, voting reps to the PSBA rather than 2, and I'll make that appointment during the president's report. So, but we are growing there. Other than that, I have no other report.
Mr. Rep, I feel remiss with our legislators here and in the legislative report section. I feel like we should hear from them. I know we're going to hear from them anyway too, but I'd love to hear from them about what's going on the Hill and what's going on as it could impact us. I don't know. I just thought I'd ask if that was something that we could spare a minute for them.
If they would like to offer something now, that would be fine. Would either of you two like to offer anything that's going on at the Hill pertinent to public education? We'll try to narrow it down a little bit.
I have some questions, but if they'd like to.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. I'll just quickly say the timing that we're in right now with the budget, just like you guys are figuring out your budget, we're trying to work the budget dollars coming forward. There's going to be a lot of moving parts that are out there. There was a bill that came through this week, and everything was a starting point. One that did not necessarily help Central Pennsylvania with a lot of the dollars and cents that would end up having to be spent, but that's a starting point, and that was the governor's proposal, which, as we know, in January when he gives it, or February, depending on the years, it's a starting point. So that's where we are right now. They put that through just this week, which actually is a little later than normal because usually we're a little farther along with knowing where we're going with some of the code bills, and certainly obviously education code is something of importance here, and the normal general appropriations. So there's a lot of dollars. Public education is at the forefront of our budget. It is a priority for all of the, I can speak for Cumberland County at least here, and certainly for the 2 of us that represent Mechanicsburg. Public education is something that is integral to every household, and whether it's dealing with the side of property taxes to pay for school or educating our children, I think that is something that goes without saying that whether it's, pre-K, K through 12, our schools that are community colleges, our higher education, it's a significant amount of tax dollars and ones that have a lot of big decisions to be made. So a lot of it is specifics, and that hasn't happened yet. So I'd love to be able to tell you. But Mechanicsburg and looking out for our school districts here in Cumberland County, we're lucky we have really good school districts. And we have good, strong public schools, whether it's Cumberland Valley, West Shore, Mechanicsburg, some of the ones out farther west that are out there. So we're lucky with the school districts that we do have. So.
Thank you. I will add very briefly, it's wonderful to see you all. As we have conversations about school funding, our focus, at least mine, I think I speak for Cheryl, has been ensuring that our population growth is accounted for. Right now, that's not the case. Some of the districts so the bill that went through this week didn't have any specific numbers, but we could deduce based on what was in the bill what would be, and there are terms that would require local assistance, meaning the state's not coming to help. And Mechanicsburg was one of those states that says you need to raise taxes $3 million in order to continue to receive state money. Cumberland Valley is $24 million, so they are at the top in the state for that. So as we drive on a new funding formula, want to be sure that our districts, which are growing, which includes most of the mid-state here, particularly Cumberland County, are seeing a share of state dollars that are in accordance with the population growth that we're seeing, that contemplates things like money for new schools and renovations to accommodate 1,200 new students in the last 14 years, and will continue to accommodate that growth. Keep in mind as you hear chatter and see news articles about bills that we are early in the process. There is a political spin to everything. Our focus, and I tell you genuinely, our focus is on ensuring our public schools here in Central Pennsylvania are adequately funded, and we will continue to support that and fight for that, and continue to hope to reform this formula in a way that reflects our area's needs and everything. And I know both of our doors are open to you and anyone in the community as you have questions about funding and about everything that affects our community at large. I certainly appreciate the partnership we've had with the board and administrators to do that. And we'll keep you posted. It's going to be a long process, and we're looking forward to reaching a resolution that hopefully keeps students first and prioritizes our public schools.
Thank you for that legislative report. Don't go far. Move on to item 3.06, Finance Facilities Committee Report, Mr. Sanker.
The committee did not meet before this last meeting, but there's a number of items that are on the agenda that were reviewed at a prior work session.
Thank you. Item 3.07, Board President, announcement of PSBA voting delegates. And this year it would also be Mr. Sanker, myself, and Mr. Frangel has volunteered to be the third person. So. Announcement of cancellation of June 25th, 2024 Finance and Facilities Committee meeting and work session. Announcement of executive session held on May 28th, 2024 at 6 p.m. for personnel, safety, and legal matters. Announcement of executive session held this evening at 5:15 p.m. for personnel matters. Announcement of executive session to be held following this evening's meeting for safety matters. And at this time, I would like to introduce our two representatives who share our school district in their jurisdictions. That's Representative Delosier and Representative Kurtz. And a little change in what I had said for live streaming purposes, if you'd like to come back up to the podium, they have a citation that they would like to issue to Dr. Leidy. And then we have another board member who will be up to issue something, and then we will all go over by the table for a photograph of the citation.
Well, good evening again. Now for the fun part. It is such a pleasure and a joy to represent the Mechanicsburg community in the State House. I'm in my first term, and as you well know, because I too had Cheryl as my rep for 14 years. Let me tell you how easy you all made it for me coming in, and Dr. Leidy in particular. We reached out in my first week or two on the job, and we were just expecting a little meet and greet and everything. And then we were here in this side of the room with like 15 people. Any question we wanted to know. As a new rep, learning about public education from a policy standpoint is different. My mom's a retired teacher. My wife taught for a while as well. And so I get it on the, having been through public school and on the home side, but to learn about funding formulas and all these nuanced policies was a whirlwind. And I will tell you, part of our job is to be a mile wide and an inch deep. And we cannot do it without being able to text superintendent from the floor of the House and ask for input on a vote, or be able to call you up at any time. And let me also say, I've made it a point to get to as many schools as possible in the district I represent, the 87th district. And every time we've reached out to say, hey, could we go see a school? Not even expecting him to show up. He's there. He's happy to be there, and always happy to show off the Wildcat pride and to welcome me as if it were my home school district. And that, to me, I deeply appreciate. The number of impressive comments I've heard this evening, as well as the news was shared across the community. It's bittersweet, I think is the word he used as well. Someone that I've had an absolute pleasure of getting to know, Dr. Lydia, and I just want to thank you for welcoming me into the Mechanicsburg family, and for being so open and respectful and transparent. And you can tell when someone enjoys what they're doing, there's a passion for them. And I think it's so.
It's that smile.
It's so wonderful to see in public education, to have people who truly have a passion for it, and people who truly give everything they have to the community through public service. So it is our distinct honor and privilege to present you a citation tonight from the House of Representatives. Before you get up, I want to turn it over and defer to someone who's known you much longer. But in my 2 years, I just want to thank you for how you've treated me, and more importantly, how you've treated our community and how you've left our community for the next generation, something I'm very excited about. So thank you, congratulations, and thank you, Sarah.
Dr. Laney, Mark. Yes, and I echo everything that Thomas has said, and I just want to add to it, if everything from doing wheelchair basketball in the gym, to the foundation dinners, to the events here within the building, to bringing together policy questions to get a water tower, to make sure that schools had water, which you wouldn't think would be a problem. But it was, and we were able to bring things together to be able to do that. But one of the biggest things that, in thinking back of all of the different years and different things that we worked on, a little bit to what was just inferred as the fact of, there was always that open communication. You constantly were prioritizing Mechanicsburg School District and its students. And one of the things that I am very grateful for is that communication, certainly with the, hey, what's going on with this bill, at all different times. But the end result was, it didn't matter who was for or against an issue. One of the things that I very much always appreciated was the willingness to have a conversation about how it actually impacted the district. It didn't matter who was on what side of an issue or who was lobbying for X, Y, and Z. We could always have that conversation to say, these are the numbers, these are the students we have to serve, and this is how we're going to go about doing it. And that was always your priority, and it's one that I very much, as to learn about, hey, this is the numbers I'm getting from my district, and this is what's going to happen. And if this bill goes into, we need, whether we agree with every single thing that happened or didn't, we understood that we were both trying to fight for the best thing we possibly could for Central Pennsylvania schools as a whole. Obviously, your sole focus was Mechanicsburg School District, which I totally understand. But the capability of always counting on that feedback. I'm very lucky with the superintendents that we have in our area, to be able to have that literally, hey, pick up the phone if you have a question, text me, tell me what's going on. But a lot of my colleagues don't have that with their school boards or with their superintendents. So the ability to have someone that you can count on and trust to say, hey, look, this is the good and the bad. and this is how it's going to affect us. And I will tell you that in every single conversation, Dr. Leidy was there talking about how important it was for Mechanicsburg School District. And as legislators, like I said, we know enough to be able to ask the questions, but we count on those that do the job every single day to add to that, to say, hey, this is what what's going to happen, and this is what these words actually mean when the rubber hits the road. And Dr. Leidy, you were very, very good at that. So I appreciate all of the back and forth. We had a lot, but again and again, you wouldn't be in this building if the forethought of the board as well as the superintendent wasn't there a number of years ago, as we heard earlier. So congratulations on thinking ahead. Congratulations on being led by a very strong leader. I know you're in good hands, obviously with the new leaders that are coming, but we will miss you, and we will certainly miss your leadership in that role, but I'm sure you'll appreciate getting some time back in your nights. So with that, Representative Coots and I have a citation from the House. We're really glad to be able to read into the record all of your accomplishments over the years and your career, and be able to call you our own. So congratulations. Oh, okay, where are we going? We're moving.
All right.
We're moving.
Well, I guess I've known you probably longer than you've known anybody else, maybe. But being on the board for 23 years, people ask me, why are you on the board for so long, and why do you keep rerunning? And I keep saying one word, passion. And there's nobody that shows the best example of what passion is than you. So, I mean, I've had jobs in several different places in my 23 years I've been with you, and no place has been like I feel here. I feel like I accomplished something here, and it's all because of you. So I have a passion, and I want to share my passion with you. So I made you something.
Wow. Wow.
You're going to retire, and someday you're going to like forget that you were even with us when you did. And you'll look at the window and say, oh, that window says M for Mark.
That would be many years though. Thank you.
You're welcome.
very much.
That's a gift from
Dr.
me.
Leidy, before you sit down, we're going to get a picture of all the board members
Yes.
with them. And if our representatives would like to come up, they're more than welcome.
Cool, your feet. That is gorgeous. The right colors.
Well, they do not make maroon stained glass.
Very, very
Oh,
nice.
yeah, Mr. Frenchel, just, there you go. Mr. Sanker. Okay. One more. Very good.
Thank you very much. May I indulge just to ask my wife to get a picture?
Oh, there you go.
Because I couldn't have done this without her, so.
Can't get out of this.
Can the board stay in here? Oh, she's part of this, yeah.
Yeah, get out of here. Oh,
Yeah.
we're all,
We'd like you all-
we're going back.
Yes, sir.
You gotta be-
Sorry, Mrs. Huff.
Oh, sorry, I'm knocking people over. Okay. One more.
So concluding my report, I'd like to thank Ms. Morgan for her handiwork and a talent I did not know she had. Move on to item 5, new business, athletics, recreation. Item 5.01, Dr. Lebo.
There we go. I'd like to ask the board to approve the athletic service contract as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 5.02, Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the fall and winter athletic appointments for the 2024-2025 year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 5.03, Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the 2024 recreation staff and summer salaries for payroll and audit purposes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
I abstain.
Item 6, new business, budget and finance. Item 6.01, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the treasurer's report as per the attachments, which include the following. Number 1 is the treasurer's report for May 2024. 2 is the board budget report, May 2024. 3 is the general fund invoices paid check number 68467 through 68640 in the amount of $961,883.65. Number 4 is the electronic payments in the amount of $5,483,354.42. Number 5 is the general fund invoices payable check number 68641 through 68660 in the amount of $683,154.37. Number 6 is the capital reserve fund invoices paid check number 1909 through 1910 in the amount of $18,054.83. Number 7 is the series of 2023 construction fund invoices paid check number 210 through 223 in the amount of $1,885,916.62. And number 8 is the investment portfolio.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Before I turn it over to Mr. Longwell, I'd just like to thank Ms. Morgan for her many years as treasurer. As we know, as us being moved from a class 3 to a class 2 district, we can no longer use a voting member as treasurer, and we had to make an appointment to a non-voting member. But I'd like to thank her for her 20 years at least as treasurer, and the extra work you put in, so.
If you'd like to make something nice for yourself. Go
All
ahead.
You
right.
can make it a T.
Okay, instead of an M. Hey, that's Tracy Morgan.
That's why, yeah, very good, see?
All right.
If there's no further discussion, Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.02, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to adopt the 2024-2025 final general fund budget in the amount of $101,571,838 with a real estate tax rate of 16.3145 mils, which includes a 3.9% increase in the real estate taxes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say that this might seem like a quick vote, but we've spent hours here, and then there was a lot more time that the administrative team has spent on this to get to this point, and I don't think that anyone likes the result of the tax increase that we have here, but it's a result of the growth in the district we've heard about many times, and perhaps I'm speaking more to the camera than to the folks around the table, but I think in light of what our representative said tonight, I hope for some better funding from the state to help alleviate the fact that the way that our local tax base has to fund now at a 75% level of this budget is inadequate, and court ruled unconstitutional, and yet we need a fix of sorts. We need maybe multiple fixes to get to a better place. So I think this is voting in favor of this, but noting that the amount of work that went into it and the fact that this still is something that our local tax base, of which we're taxpayers, but there's 30,000 of us who pay taxes here, that this is something we shouldn't have to burden in this way, and I hope for better things from the state.
Could I add also,
Absolutely.
while the 3.9% increase is significant, it is a percentage less than would be allotted, and I think that's worth noting. I know we all know that, but I think that's good for the audience.
Absolutely, Dr. Lewin. Any other comment, discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.03, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the fund balance commitments for the general fund for 2023 through 2024.
Do we have a second? First off,
And I'm
Mr. Longwell, is that
thinking that's
correct?
right.
Or
Yeah, so it's this is a classic example of working in the 3 years, and I sometimes even have to, in my own mind, try to straighten it out. So the fund balance commitments are for the year that's expiring in 23-24. We're adopting the budget for 24-25, and then this fall we'll start talking to the board about 25-26, and so we're always kind of in 3-year cycle of budget.
I was going to wait till the second to ask you, but I saw you thinking, so I thought
Yeah,
maybe you
I-
might want
Yeah, I was
I'm-
processing myself. There's 3 years there.
I saw it, I'm like, I think that might be wrong.
Do we have a second on item 6.03?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.04, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to adopt the homestead farmstead exclusion resolution establishing the homestead and farmstead exclusion amount for 2024 through 2025.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.05, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the resolution for the insurance of general obligation bonds series of 2024 as presented in the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.06, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve an alignment of the district's property tax rebate program with the state's program for income eligibility and standard rebate amount.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.07, Ms. Morgan.
I ask the board to appoint Penn State Health as the school physician for the 2024-2025 school year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.08, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to appoint Stock and Leader as the district solicitor for 2024 through 2025, which includes the rates listed in the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.09, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to appoint Boyer and Ritter as the district's auditor for a 3-year term, beginning with an audit of the year ended June 30th, 2024.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.010, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the insurance renewals for 2024 through 2025, which include the district's property liability coverage and student accident insurance.
For a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.11, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the contract for B&S Transportation effective July 1, 2024 for a term of 3 years.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say how, they're a great partner for us, and I knock wood that we haven't experienced the same level of disruption that other districts have with buses and bus drivers, and our bus drivers are great. So I'm very happy that we're able to work out good terms with a good partner like this.
Any other discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Lastly, Ms. Morgan, item 6.012.
Last one. I ask the board to authorize board officers to approve payment of invoices for the month of July.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 7, new business curriculum. Item 7.01, Mrs. Huff.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the student services contracts as presented in the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 8, new business facilities. Item 8.01, Mr. Sanker.
I make a motion to authorize the administration to work with the district architect for design work at the middle school.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 8.02, Mr. Sanker.
I make a motion to approve the lease agreement with River Rock for the use of Sharmanstown Elementary.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Happy that we were able to have this facility in our district, and I'm glad that we're able to have renewal terms with them. Not every district has that ability, and so when we toured there of the kids who had to travel over the mountain to get here, like, I'm happy we have this for the students who need it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9, new business personnel. Item 9.01, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to approve the personnel report as presented in the attachments.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And let's just like to the board, I'd like to introduce one of the people on here tonight is a communication specialist, which is the new position we filled at the district office. And Ms. Panzer is in the audience there. I just thought I'd introduce her, so that you can see her face and familiarity with her. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Any other discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.02, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to appoint Dr. Mark Leidy as administrative consultant effective July 1, 2024 through August 9, 2024.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? Just like to thank Dr. Leidy for offering to help out for those, 5 weeks for the transition between you and Dr. Fitz, that I'm sure it'll make Dr. Fitz's job much easier to have the experienced person there for a few weeks, but not in the picture at the beginning of the school year. That's right. You can't lean on you in August. Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.03, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to appoint Dr. Christopher Bowman as Assistant Superintendent starting August 12, 2024, pending receipt of all necessary pre-employment paperwork.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
How many tractors do we owe Conewago Valley?
Prices have gone up.
So at this time, Dr. Bowman, if you'd like to stand up and just so everybody can get a face of you, that
Good evening, everyone.
is our new assistant
Excited
superintendent.
about the opportunity of becoming a Wildcat and to team up with Dr. Vince and this board to continue to help this great school district thrive and grow. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.04, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to appoint Gregory Longwell as Assistant Superintendent, Chief Fiscal Officer, starting July 1, 2024.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I would just like to introduce Mr. Longwell. For those who may not know him, he has been elevated as Assistant to and Chief Financial Officer to the Assistant Superintendent with the same titles and responsibilities. So congratulations on your new position.
Well deserved.
Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Up. I'm humbled to be part of the team and honored to be at this district, and very much appreciate it. Very much appreciate it.
Discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.05, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to approve the extra duty assignment for the year 2024-2025.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.06, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to approve the retiree service contracts for the 2024-2025 school year.
Do we have a second? Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9.07, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to approve the Section 125 documents as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10, new business policy. Item 10.01, Mr. Frangel.
I'd like to ask the board to approve second and final reading of revised board policy 005, organization.
Further discussion. But do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10.02, Mr. Frangel.
I ask the board to approve the second and final reading of revised board policy 229 regarding student fundraising.
The second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10.03, Mr. Frangel.
I'd ask the board to approve the second and final reading of the revised board policy 324 on personnel files.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10.04, Mr. Frangel.
I ask the board to approve the second and final reading of the revised board policy 800 on records management.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
10.05, Mr. Frangel.
I ask the board to approve the second and final reading of the revised board policy 830 on security of computerized personal information and breach notification.
Do we have a second? Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10.06, Mr. Frangel.
I ask the board to approve the second and final reading of new board policy 830.1, data governance, storage, and security.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 12, hearing of visitors. We have reached a second opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents and taxpayers of the school district. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please show your name and municipality in which you reside. If anybody would like to comment on items that were on the agenda, not on the agenda tonight, please come up to the podium.
I think I heard Greg's son Jimmy say that he's proud of his dad.
Thank you, Dr. Benson.
And any other public comment? Item 13, Ms. Morgan.
What if I don't make this motion?
The next
We can
junior
keep-
member does.
We can keep him for a while longer.
So
I'd like to
you're
ask
already
the
on
board-
6 weeks. You already are.
I'd like to ask the board to adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.